We can't blame Democrats or left-wing voters for the attempt on Trump's life, but we can look at their reaction after it happened, because it's hideous. Plus, the Republican National Convention of 2024 looks a lot like the Democratic National Convention of 2004. Who is Matthew Crooks? Who is Amber Rose? What the heck Republican Party is this? I'll explain. This is your favorite night of the week, The Deep End on Tim Hatch Live. Welcome in, everybody, to the regular night of The Deep End. My name is Tim, and this is Tim Hatch Live, and I'm so glad that you are here on YouTube or listening on your podcast app for Tuesday night, where we look at the news of the day through a Christian worldview. It is Season 7, Episode 31 of The Deep End, and this content is for educational purposes only. Okay, big night for Donald Trump and his supporters last night. He reemerged for the first time since the public assassination attempt. He reemerged in public since the assassination attempt at the first night of the RNC, and he came in with the bandage on his ear to resounding applause. And I gotta say, looking very subdued. This is a man who loves to pump his fist. This is a man who is always looking like he's ready for a fight. And just by the nature of his facial expressions, you see a man here who has really had a sincerely incredible brush with death, and now is probably thinking about how lucky he is to be alive. I mean, you just gotta, again, put yourself in his shoes to think about what he has been through for the last 48 hours. That moment with his son kind of hit me, because I was thinking about, man, he would be having a different week right now if Trump didn't turn his head a half of an inch. So what do I see as a Christian, as a pastor? I really hope that I'm seeing a man who has been humbled, who is grateful to be alive, who understands that just maybe God has preserved him for a reason. And again, not the Savior. Nope. I hope that he does not see himself as the Savior. I hope that he sees himself as a servant of God, a servant of his purposes. Whether or not he believes in God, he can be a servant of God. You do know that, right? Like King Cyrus did not believe in the God of Israel, Yahweh, but he served the God of Israel in giving permission to the Jews so that they could go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple and then actually immigrate back into the promised land. There's also news out of the Secret Service. Bad stuff coming out about this very inept DEI-focused Secret Service. Let's do Deep End News.
Deep End News. The news you choose if you could choose news.
Okay, so Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, a DEI hire in her own right, gave the most bizarre reason why an agent wasn't put on the roof of a building that was literally 125 yards from where President Trump was speaking. She cites a significant vulnerability in the roof, that it was pitched and it was sloped. So they didn't want to risk an agent's life by putting him on a sloped roof. Has anyone, raise your hand if you've been on a sloped roof, because I've been on them. They can be dangerous if they're like over 45 degrees, but under 45 degrees, any grown man can climb pretty easily and stay there. But this is the viewpoint of the person in charge of the organization that is dedicated to keeping our politicians safe. This represents a prime example of excessive caution to the detriment of security. You see, to keep people safe, you have to take risks. You have to cover the person you're trying to keep safe with your own body. You have to have these protective instincts that encourage risks to be taken on behalf of the person that you are serving. This, again, is a stunningly bad negligence of duty on her part, and she should be fired immediately. Will she be fired? I don't know, because it's very hard to fire DEI hires. That's where we are right now. Then there's this from CNN. This is Congressman Cory Mills from Florida, who made a compelling argument that the shooting might be an inside job by the government entirely on CNN. His argument was so compelling that CNN decided to almost cut him off the air while he made this argument.
I look at all of these things, and I look at different videos where an assailant will pull a firearm on a law enforcement officer, and the first thing they do is they immediately pull and draw and mitigate the threat and the risk. I ask why a local law enforcement officer did not do so. The other thing is that when you set up an advanced team, I keep hearing this about the perimeter elements.
Yeah.
The perimeter is actually established by your threats that are in the area. So if I don't have any threats outside of 100 yards, okay, fine, I can cordon off a certain area. But if I have a building 160 yards, perfectly adjacent to the stage, that's an obvious threat, especially in an elevated position that has overwatch. That's a sniper's paradise. And we talk about eagle's nest. You also have, which no one talks about, but the water tower.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's not a failure on the ground for sure, but 100%. Also a failure in advance?
I think it's a failure in advance. I think it's a failure to have the counter snipers to be able to establish their range fin and their sketch maps.
I also heard we've also learned that local snipers were stationed inside that building. At the time.
I haven't heard that piece of it yet, but that doesn't necessarily make sense unless they were actually in a window which was backed off, because a lot of times you get yourself in there. Sometimes you expose your rifle in a way to try and do a force protection or a show of force that actually stops things. Others are actually more tactical where they'll sit back a little bit, but a sniper for the law enforcement is only trained to shoot about 75 yards, unlike your counter sniper teams that are on set. But here's my problem. In having done this for so long, they always say the adage of ignorance is bliss, and I think that's true. I've done thousands of advances. I've done thousands of counter sniper operations with our teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
But wait, talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this right the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional? I mean an intentional failure on the part of...
No, I wouldn't say an intentional failure on the part of, but I gotta just, I sit here and I scratch my head. You don't want to be the conspiracist. You don't want to be the person.
I'm telling you, because that's what it's leaning towards.
No, I know, and that's the issue, is that you walk this fine balance of, you're not trying to be a conspiracist, but you look at it and you go, how could this have gone so...
But it's one thing if someone on the street says it. It's another. You, Cory Mills, member of Congress, former sniper, you saying it, it makes my eyebrows go up. When you say you're walking the line on this, intentional what?
It almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you, now we're attempting to kill you and take you off the stage.
Let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at all the different possible capabilities. One of the things as a military member, one of the things as a person who's run in the special operations communities before, one of the people who's actually done this is that you look at all potential analysis, right?
Donald Trump and his team have said,
No, I agree.
Dial it back. Do not blame this on Joe Biden.
Oh, well, actually, I didn't say Joe Biden, to be completely
Who's the they then? Let's be very specific.
Yeah. Well, that's what the investigations do. Was it local law enforcement that had made the mistakes, or was there something to it? Was there other types of things that we need to be analyzing or looking at and providing analysis? My point is that when something's so significant, you're talking about something that hasn't happened in decades, right?
I totally...
But my point is this. From a perspective of someone who's actually conducted these are not difficult advances. This is not like I'm putting together a stage placement and a tight shot. This is about looking at your surroundings. What is my green, yellow, and red route, which is your routes out in case? What is my actual elements that I need to be looking at as far as mitigating threats or risks or increased levels? Where's my range fan for the sniper that says, okay, here's my 100, my 200, my sketch. Here's an area where someone could shoot. Because here's my thing.
So you're
Let's
saying,
just say it's a voice element.
You're saying this is so basic that how big the screw up was, that's what's leading your brain down this road?
That's exactly right, in a way.
Look,
but because here's the other thing.
Tom Emmer was just on with me, and he said very specifically to me, I wrote it down, he said very clearly, it is too early to be talking about who is at fault and who is responsible.
That's why an investigation is necessary.
But, is it not dangerous? Is it not reckless to even be throwing around the word intentionally.
So to question things as we do an investigation is recklessness, because at that point, then should we never question anything? My point is this.
I'm not trying to be PC. My point is in the political environment that we are in.
What would it have taken, right? Let's just say that resources was limited. Let's go with that as a reasoning. So how many times have you seen where they just put a police car inside of a parking lot with not an officer in it and just leave the lights on as a deterrent? Why couldn't that have been a simple thing that was placed in? Why couldn't we have said to the owner of the actual AGR company, hey, look, we don't want to disrupt your business, but we also want to make sure your parking lot is clear of people trying to park in there for the rally. Why don't we place an officer there? My point is that this was too easy of a solution. And when I think about 160
I'm just so uncomfortable with even having
I'm uncomfortable with having to say it.
You see the strategy here? It's too early to talk about it. And then they'll just let it lie. And then if you bring it up later, they've already got the law in place to hide all of the documentation for the next 45 years, a.k.a. the development of the COVID vaccine. Right? Remember when they told us that we wouldn't know what was in it for how many years? We wouldn't know about all this, big pharma influence over our COVID vaccine rollout for however many years. I forget what it was, like 75 years. And so you can't talk about it now. Let's first let the FBI do its job, like we're supposed to trust them implicitly. And then eventually they're going to close the books, seal them, put them in a warehouse somewhere. And someday the statute of limitations will run out when it's no longer relevant to anybody's life. And we'll find out that perhaps Cory Mills was onto something here. I am not suggesting that he's right, but it's worthy of a look even right now. What do you think? Our government has done this before. This is not new. Our government is shady, friends. You have to know that. You can't just accept everything that you hear about the federal government of the United States. What do you think? Inside job or not? Now, let's turn the page and ask this question. Who is Matthew Crooks? Who is this supposed shooter of President Trump? Well, we have some info on that tonight. Here he is, and I don't like to share the names or the pictures of shooters, but in this case, because it was a presidential candidate, I think we will make an exception. He has a Wikipedia page. He graduated with honors from high school. He received an associate degree of engineering science from his community college, Allegheny County. Just 2 months before the shooting, he was employed as a dietary aide in a local nursing home when he was shot to death a couple of days ago. My question is, why was he in a BlackRock commercial? This is him from a screenshot in a recent BlackRock commercial that has now been scrubbed from the internet. Why? Why was he there? That's not a coincidence. The New York Times cites the fact that he didn't want attention in school. Classmates say he didn't want good or negative attention. This is Juliana Grooms, 19, who first remembered seeing Mr. Crooks when they were freshmen. A former classmate says Thomas Crooks was rejected by his high school's rifle team. Fellow student Jason Kohler says Crooks was rejected by the school rifle team. My brother was on the rifle team. He said that Thomas had tried out for the team. He just didn't make it because he had a bad shot. Former classmate Sarah D'Angelo says Crooks studied the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in honors American history class. Quote, you had to make your own conspiracy theory about where the shooter was and how you thought it was done, D'Angelo tells Inside Edition. Take it for what it's worth with Inside Edition on that reporting. But the fact of the matter is this kid does not fit any kind of particular paradigm when it comes to shooters. The claim is that he was bullied at school. He sat by himself at the cafeteria for lunch. Quote, based on the way he dressed, you know how kids are nowadays. If you didn't fit in with the clique, they're going to come after you. That's kind of how he was. Kohler says he would sit by himself, play games on his computer. Kohler also says that Crooks wore a anti-COVID mask long after they were required. So, mask-wearing, socially isolated, terrible marksman. The plot thickens. The neighborhood where Crooks lived with his family has been blocked off with crime scene tape. Neighbors tell Inside Edition that the family kept to themselves. All I've heard is that there was a very reclusive family, that they didn't really talk to people. So people that live around them don't really know them. Again, we said this last night. Crooks' parents are counselors, mental health professionals, which tells me a lot about the mental health industry. If you cannot identify the proclivities of a child in your home, how can you help anybody outside of your home? Again, mental health industry is absolutely fraught with all kinds of problems. Now, before his social media accounts were scrubbed, somebody did happen to grab a screenshot of his followers list on social media. Now, this is a person that the news is reporting as a registered Republican, perhaps Trump supporter even. Yeah, sure. I always find that people who support political candidates do so by shooting them. And I just had to think to myself, if you're going to shoot a political opponent, the first thing you do is register with their party to kind of throw off the scent, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's lame, but you do it. So sure, he was registered Republican, but he did donate $15 to Joe Biden's campaign. Check out the list of his social media followings: Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, LGBTQ, another LGBTQ account. Yeah, real hard right-winger here, friends. Then people are reporting this scene from his high school years. The internet acts fast, friends. This is him being bullied in school. I have questions because if you consider that bullying, I don't know what to say about the future of your life. Bullying is when you actually get smacked, chased, pushed around, shoved in a locker, grabbing someone's pant leg. Not exactly 5-star bullying material, but this is the narrative that we've been given. We have to make our own decisions about what we're going to believe. Now, Newsweek reports that Crooks had a Donald Trump sign in his yard. Again, registered Republican of Pennsylvania, but he gave $15 to a Progressive Political Action Committee on January 20th, 2021, the day Biden was sworn into office. A neighbor in Bethel Park, the Pittsburgh suburb where he lived, said they saw pro-Trump signs in the family's yard as recently as a few months ago. Well, maybe his parents support Trump. There absolutely was MAGA supporting signs for a while, Kelly Little told WTAE. I imagine that's in Pittsburgh. So, lots of questions about who this guy is. Lots of smoke. Lots of doubt in my mind. And again, I don't think we can trust what the media has to say about this kid at all. And I think we have to make our own assessments. And I'll leave that in your own hands. But here's what we don't have to leave as if it's vague. Where the heck is the Republican Party going? We have to talk about RNC Night 1. That was last night, Monday night. The Republican National Committee comes around every 4 years before the federal elections. And this one raised some eyebrows for social conservative voters like myself. First off, there was Amber Rose. Amber Rose was a featured speaker in the late evening and a staunch, now, Trump supporter. She used to hate Trump. Her father asked her if what she believed about him was true. She did her homework, and she came around to liking Trump. Here she is saying that.
My entire family is racially diverse. And I believe the left-wing propaganda that Donald Trump was a racist. My father said, "No, he's not, Amber. What are you talking about?" And when I insisted, he said, "Prove it." So to prove my father wrong, I did my research and looked into all things Donald Trump. People have to do their research. I watched all the rallies, and I started meeting so many of you, his red hat wearing supporters. I realized Donald Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love. And that's when it hit me. These are my people. This is where I belong.
Okay, so Amber Rose feels like she belongs with the Republican Party. And I would like to say that she is more than welcome to support whichever political party she wants to. She's an American. Who is Amber Rose? This is over at Yahoo News. She's a former model. She's a former rapper. She was a former muse for one Kanye West. She wears a lot of hats, former reality TV star, entrepreneur, and now RNC speaker. She was one of the final speakers on Monday night. Quote, "We all want a better country for our children," she began her speech with, and she described her most important role as that of a mother. "But I'm here to tell you, no matter your political background, that the best chance we have to give our babies a better life is to elect Donald Trump." You may be wondering why I'm up here telling you this. I'm no politician, and I don't want to be. As USA Today noted in a recent profile, Rose has had a host of television and music video appearances over the years. She rose to fame after appearing in Jeezy's 2009 Put On music video featuring Kanye West. Rose appeared in a number of hip-hop videos throughout the 2010s. She had a cameo role on several television reality shows, including RuPaul's Drag Race, Dancing with the Stars, and America's Next Top Model. Also hosting her own talk show, The Amber Rose Show, which ran for one season in 2016. Many people became familiar with her during her 2-year relationship with rapper Kanye West, which began in 2008. In 2012, Rose released her debut single, Fame, with rapper and then fiancé Wiz Khalifa. Khalifa? The two married the following year, but later divorced, and they have a son together. Okay, so that's a little bit of her bio, but there's even more. And it gets a bit more sketchy for social conservatives such as myself. Now listen to her on a recent interview. This is circling around the internet, talking about her atheism and not hers, but Satanism in general. Watch.
Yeah, but you're not.
No, I'm an atheist for sure.
Not a Satanist.
I'm not a Satanist, no.
And there is a distinction.
Satanists are just, they're atheists as well, but they're just more political.
Okay.
They have like it's actually a very rational, logical religion. They help a lot of people, a lot of women to get abortions.
This person was platformed on the first night of the RNC. Again, she has the right to vote for whoever she wants, support whichever political party that she wants. And me probably voting for Donald Trump myself, I'm kind of glad that she's voting for Donald Trump. But my question here is, do we want to see this kind of person be the headliner at the most important event for conservatives in a 4-year news cycle? Then there's this video from last night, at the first night of the RNC. The RNC is moving left. Erik Trump sat down one-on-one with NBC News to say the following about abortion and pro-life policies.
The Republican platform, interestingly, has moved to the center on a couple of key issues. For the first time in 40 years, the Republican platform does not call for a federal abortion ban. It no longer defines marriage as between one man and one woman, but it doesn't. So is this a sign that your father is moving to the center in some ways or on some issues?
Yes, I think he's always been there on those issues, to tell you the truth. And I think that's reflective of who my father is and what he believes in. And I think that's reflective of my wife, Laura, who runs the RNC, and clearly what she believes in. And I'm proud of the party. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, this country has real holes in the roof, and you've got to fix those holes, and you've got to stop worrying about the little, spot on the wall in the basement. You've got to fix those holes, and we've got real immigration problems.
Spot on the wall in the basement. That is how he referred to pro-life policies and traditional marriage views that the Republicans had held up until a few weeks ago, when behind closed doors, Trump had the Republican statement of platform remove such policies, which had been centerpiece to who they were previously. So, questions for you Christians. How are you feeling about the move of the RNC to what the NBC reporter calls the center, which 8 years ago was the left? You see that? These are not centrist views. Pro-gay marriage and abortion is okay in some instances. Those are left-wing views up until, 100 days ago. Now they are considered centrist views. Do you see the slippery slope that is coming upon the entire country? And I bring this up because Christians must be aware of it. And I have a lot more to say, but there's a lot more evidence to give you, such as prayers to false gods. Now, this happened in 2012, in 2016, I believe in 2020, I'm not sure, but it happened last night. A prayer from a religious Sikh, S-I-K-H, person, and Republicans bowing their heads and holding their hands in somewhat agreement. Watch.
Dear Waheguru, our one true God, we thank you for creating America as a unique haven on this earth where all people are free to worship according to their faith. We seek your blessings and guidance for our beloved country. Please bless our people with wisdom as they vote in the upcoming election, and please bless with humility, honesty, skill, and integrity all those who conduct the election.
So that is Harmeet Dhillon, and she is a Sikh. She is a very skilled lawyer from California, very strong conservative voice. By the way, she ran for the head of the RNC in December of 2023 against Ronna McDaniel, and she lost in a landslide. She did pray at the 2016 convention that featured then candidate Donald Trump, and has repeated the act here this week at the RNC. Back in 2012, the RNC began hosting Sikh prayers when Mitt Romney was the party's nominee. So this is not new, but it is the trajectory of the Republican National Party. And I think the strategy is pretty simple. The strategy is appeal to more kinds of voters. Of course, we want a big tent. We want people to come in, not out, and I get it. And Republicans cannot put all their eggs into the conservative Christian basket anymore. Why? Well, because there's just not that many of us anymore. The country is decidedly growing more and more secular. And at the same time as growing more and more secular, those who are like me, social conservatives, biblical Christians, are becoming far more convicted on those issues regarding public policy. But they can't appeal to just me and you. So here's where you are at, conservative-leaning voter as a Christian. You've got to do some mental work and some due diligence on your part to say, how can I vote and who should I vote for in good conscience? Because the landscape is changing, and it's changing ever so slightly, but definitely in a far more pluralistic, progressive atmosphere. I mean, when the Republicans no longer support pro-life views, can social conservatives say that they are diehard Republicans? Not saying that they always did, but many of them did. And I get this argument. We must appeal to more voters because the church and the state are separate entities, and the state can't run the church and the church must not run the state. We've had those arguments for as long as I can remember. The church-state relationship is always fraught with very difficult realities. And they're actually biblical realities. Like, for instance, the Bible itself tells us that not everyone is born again and not everyone will be born again. In fact, Paul tells Timothy that many live as enemies of the cross of Christ. And if you consider Jesus' own parables about the seed and the soil, there's 4 different kinds of soils, and there's only one that actually takes root and produces fruit. That means that 25% of those who hear the gospel will actually believe it. That means 75% won't. So if you take those numbers and apply them to politics, well, there's a case to be made here. Republicans have to move on from just the socially conservative Christians out there and reach a far broader base of support. After all, if 75% of the electorate is not Christian or not socially conservative Christians, then you do yourself a disservice by only appealing to them. It's a very small minority that you really have to rile up and literally get every single one of them to vote if you want a chance in any electoral process. But this is kind of huge, okay? If there is no distinguishable socially conservative difference between Republicans and Democrats anymore, then every Christian is free to vote for the candidate of their choice, Democrat or Republican. And no voter can anymore claim to have the corner on the, quote, more biblical candidate market. That's just a fact. You might not want to hear it, but it's true. And it seems that's where we are. And guess what, friends? Donald Trump brought us here. If for years, Democrat voters who have ignored pro-abortion views and pro-LGBT views in their party for their preferred economic policies and voted accordingly, then now Republicans will be doing the same thing as they vote for Republicans, then my question might be this. Do some of those Republican conservative voters owe their Christian brothers and sisters who voted Democrat in past elections do they owe them an apology because they're now doing the same thing? So what could a Christian do in this political environment? Maybe you're more confused than ever before. I don't blame you if you are. I'm a bit confused because there is no doubt that both parties are looking far more alike when it comes to social political issues. My admonition to you is absolutely vote your conscience, your Christian conscience, and your Christian values. But I do think we are getting to the point where we're just right back to where we were in the 1980s, which is we're just going to argue about how much we're going to spend of our tax money and where we're going to put it, instead of should people be allowed to enter into a gay marriage? Should people be allowed to abort their child? I mean, those issues are not the issues of the day right now. And this is shocking, maybe for you to hear. Maybe for me even to realize that's the content on this program, and I thank you for watching. You see, we might be living in what I would call the age of Jeroboam. The age of Jeroboam was shortly after the apex of Israel's history, monarchy. The monarchy started with King Saul. Saul was replaced by King David. David had a son named Solomon, and Solomon brought the kingdom to the apex of its existence. Silver was as common as stones in Jerusalem. They had wealth, they had health, they had prosperity, and then it all slowly deteriorated. Slowly at first, and then very quickly in the end. And in the age of Jeroboam, you have this upstart kind of foreman who's overseeing Solomon's building projects, and he is assigned to rip apart the kingdom from Rehoboam, Solomon's son. And the first thing that Jeroboam does in 1 Kings 12 is make 2 calves of gold, the very same sin that Aaron committed when Israel came out of Egypt and were waiting for Moses to come down from the Mount Horeb. And then he had the people stop going to Jerusalem to worship and then start going to the temples that he set up in Bethel and Dan. And this thing, the Bible says, became a sin for the people. And they went from everywhere to go and worship the 2 calves that Jeroboam set up. So this is history repeating itself in some small measure. Now, there is a gospel message to be had here from the past weekend's events. Donald Trump is looking more heroic than ever for the cause of the conservative movement. Some people are extolling him again as some kind of a messianic figure. I love this little cartoon that I ran across on the internet. He took a bullet from me with the guy with the Make America Great Again hat and the American flag. But there's a guy pointing to the cross saying, have I got good news for you? Yeah. Let us not lose, Christian, our absolutely essential conviction about the gospel, about when life begins, about what makes a marriage, and at the same time, start to enter into a new paradigm of conservative voting. We have to pick, I guess, the less tasteless or the less nasty choice at this point. Now, here's some good news. Maybe this will clarify things, and that is that leftists are truly unhinged people. For instance, Gabe Sanchez said this about the RNC night 1. Trump fell asleep at the RNC on the first night. He just got there. If you watch the video that he references here, a prayer is happening. So Trump is not sleeping, friend. He's praying. I know that might be a foreign concept to someone like Gabe Sanchez, but yeah, sleep is actually not prayer, and prayer is not sleep. But they look very similar. Welcome to your first class in religious studies. Now, we also have to acknowledge that there is already a lot of fallout from the shooting on the left. New narrative alert. Here's how it goes. The shooter missed, but it was staged too. Oh, and I fear political violence, and Trump is a racist. That's where the political left is. Enter this person, this cat-eared wearing, pride flag toting, crazy person with the nuclear tattoo on her shoulder. Listen to what she says about the shooting.
Absolutely. You guys are out here on the heels of the attempted Trump assassination. Can I get your reaction to what happened the other day?
Well, it's a shame the person missed, but it's ironic that the shooter was also a Republican, and I am scared about political violence.
You're scared of political violence, but you were hoping that he wouldn't have missed.
Yes.
Wow. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, many people are thankful that the shooter missed and could have led to a lot of conflict in the country.
Regardless if Trump is in power or not, he has a lot of influence, and that makes him a very dangerous person, and nothing will stop. And we want to live, and sometimes Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter that included one of my favorite quotes,
This should be good.
that sometimes the tree of liberty needs to be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants.
Do you hope to see others also, if all that holds true, do you want to see others try what this young man tried at this Trump rally?
I don't know if it would do any good.
Okay, interesting, yeah. I see you have a crossbow over here. Can you tell me a little bit more about it and why you decided to bring it here? Yes, you have I don't know what it is. It looks like a crossbow.
Yeah, it's a pistol crossbow. I don't like firearms. This is a much safer alternative, and it's used only for personal defense as an absolute last resort.
Okay, that's enough. The lack of self-awareness is shocking for the mask-wearing crowd. Remember, she fits right in with Matthew Crooks there, wearing the mask still to this day here on July 2024. But there's a vast swath of the population in California that are absolutely convinced the shooting was entirely staged. Enter these people on what looks to be Santa Monica Pier.
It's a false flag. False flag. Yeah, false flag. Somebody died and 2 people injured. What do you think about that? False flag. False flag.
I thought it was magnificently staged. It was professionally done. It almost looked real.
Wait. Staged by who?
Oh, by Mr. Trump, of course.
I think this whole thing is staged.
You think it was staged?
Yeah.
It depends on everybody's view. Yeah.
View of the assassination attempt? What do you think? Does it kind of depend on where you're standing, whether or not you agree with the assassination attempt or disagree with it?
I just don't see that being the truth, but that's I'd rather just not make any comment.
Really quick, what are you talking about the truth? What do you mean? Oh, you just don't believe it was an assassination attempt?
No.
Please don't. We're so anti-Trump. I don't even want to.
Was it a bad thing, though? Was it a bad thing? Would you condemn it?
Oh, that he got shot? Of course.
Right.
Of course, you don't do that.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that's really bad. Yeah, exactly. You don't do that. Was it staged? Probably.
Staged? Okay, so you think Trump maybe staged a fake assassination for support? Okay. And that resulted in somebody dying and other people being critically injured?
I haven't seen the news today. I'm not here for the news. I haven't seen anything. I'm on vacation.
So you just thought it was fake?
Of course.
One person died in the crowd, 2 critically injured. What happened there?
Small price. It wouldn't matter to Trump. Do you think he cares if people die for him to be elected? Death doesn't mean.
Wow. Do you think he cares if people die for him to be elected? They are right back to their pre-shooting narratives. In fact, they never left. Trump is Hitler. And they're going to believe this no matter what happens. This is what you call completely lost, completely blind, complete darkness of mind. It's exactly what Ephesians chapter 4 talks about concerning the unbeliever. They are going to live in that darkness, embrace that darkness, and love that darkness. Meanwhile, pre-shooting narratives are back even from the White House. Quote, Biden labels Trump a threat to democracy after urging Americans to tone down heated rhetoric. President Biden doubled down on his assertion that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy during an interview with NBC News on Monday, despite repeatedly calling on Americans to lower the temperature in U.S. politics in the wake of the failed assassination attempt against the former president. In a 20-minute interview that aired unedited Monday evening, NBC anchor Lester Holt asked Biden whether he had done any soul-searching about his own political rhetoric and how it could incite people. And evidently not. He's okay with it. So nothing's changing for a lot of people. We had maybe a 3-hour kumbaya moment on Saturday night, and it's all back to business as usual on the political left. So maybe this will clear things up for you about the fog that the Republican National Convention might be creating for you as a socially conservative voter, such as myself. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to slide further down that slippery slope of craziness. The leading Democrat candidate for 2028 is named Gavin Newsom. He's the governor of California, and he just signed into law AB 1955. This is Assembly Bill 1955, which bars schools in California from requiring parental notification if a child identifies as transgender. Now, this is where the Democrats are. So here's my question, and it's an important question. Is where Gavin Newsom is today, where Republicans will be in 20 years? Because it took quite some time for Democrats to embrace gay marriage. They did so in 2012 after Obama and before him, Biden came out in support of gay marriage as official candidates for president and vice president. In fact, Biden was the test case, if you will, for Obama's later adoption of gay marriage policy. Well, they officially made that policy in 2012, and now here we are 12 years later, and it looks like the Republicans are there. So in 12 years, will the Republicans be where the Democrats now are? Is this the trajectory Republicans will eventually have to take for the sake of appealing to more voters? You see, at some point, the question has to be asked, at what cost? At what cost do we, or do political leaders who need to appeal to social conservatives, what payment do they give to Caesar? How many coins to get the power that they want? Maybe perhaps we should be remembering at this point that Jesus called us the salt of the earth, not the kings of the earth. Salt is in very short supply. It is always a fraction of the ingredients, and it doesn't take much to make a huge difference. We aren't the kings, we are the salt, and we have influence. And perhaps now more than ever, we need true biblical Christians influencing both political parties, Republicans and Democrats, to embrace a far more biblically friendly platform. That's just my suggestion, just my thoughts as a pastor. Now, remember this, too, that the Republican is always Hitler. I got to bring this up because this happens on a regular basis. I have been watching politics since 2002 very closely. And I watched when they demonized George W. Bush as the worst person on earth. And they crashed the economy in 2006 as soon as the Democrats took the House and the Senate. The housing crash was a job well done by political powers of 2006 and 2007 to oust the Republican president and usher in a new world order under which the Democrats would perpetually hold onto power through a coalition of minorities and disgruntled voters with the Republican Party. That happened in 2008. I watched it all transpire. Then Donald Trump broke the mold, broke through an election he shouldn't have won in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, and we are where we are today. This is like Trump season 9, okay? So what happens is whoever the Republican is, whoever the leading candidate is, they are worse than the last guy. So I remember saying they could never treat another Republican candidate as badly as they treated George W. Bush. Well, enter Donald Trump, and he is officially Hitler. And you say, well, they'll never treat somebody beyond Donald Trump as worse than Donald Trump. Yes, they will. Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance as his running mate yesterday. And J.D. Vance, who's been in politics for approximately a year and 6 months, okay, he was elected to the Senate in the last election cycle from Ohio. He is now going to possibly be the next vice president, so not long on political experience or leadership experience, but he could be fast-tracking his way to the office of president. And Van Jones had words about how bad he is. Remember, whoever the next Republican is, he's worse than the last one, and he's far worse than you imagine. Watch this.
You know, part of the reason that J.D. Vance matters isn't for these kind of short-term electoral calculations. He matters because of what he means to the Republican Party long-term. This is cementing a kind of nationalism. Yeah. Now, Trump, to your point, I agree with you, he's an instinctive, impulsive, intuitive nationalist. J.D. Vance is an ideological nationalist. That's a much more dangerous virus because he can polish this stuff and make it seem palatable to people. He can sell this stuff to Silicon Valley. He can sell this stuff other places. And what it does is it locks the Republican Party on a pathway that I think is dangerous for the world. Again, the Ukrainians are now in deep trouble. NATO is now in deep trouble. Trump he could have gone with a Nikki Haley, and signal to the world, hey, listen, I got to get stuff to my base, but I'm not going to abandon the world. This pick is a horror on the world stage. So J.D. Vance matters because Donald Trump is pointing the Republican Party in a very scary direction for the long term.
Wow. So again, that's how it goes. Whoever the Republican is, he's worse than the last Republican, and he is Hitler. And he is poison, and he will ruin the world, and on and on and on it goes. Man, I've been watching this for 22 years. At some point, the music just gets old, but that's where we are. Meanwhile, again and again, the left continues to show themselves for who they are, such as the narratives of it was staged and I fear for my life for political violence. And at the same time, I wish that the shooter didn't miss. Last night, I reported about Jack Black singing happy birthday to one of his band members from the Tenacious D band in Sydney, Australia, asking about his birthday wish and getting the response from his bandmate that he wished that the next shooter wouldn't miss Trump. So that leads to today's news. Jack Black cancels the rest of the Tenacious D Tour. So what happened? Swift reaction from the Parliament of Australia. Senator Ralph Babbitt put out a statement calling for the deportation of the entire band immediately, citing the calls to political violence as unacceptable. Rightly so. So Jack Black stepped away from Tenacious D as of today and stated that he was blindsided by what was said at the show. He would never condone hate speech or encourage political violence in any form. But they are these people. That's who you are. I mean, we are 24 hours removed from that moment. And this is not going to fly, in my opinion. Full disclosure, the band member, Kyle Gass, did issue an apology on his Instagram. And CNN reports that he has been dropped by his talent representative as of right now. So that's where it gets you because, guys, there's cameras and there's podcasters everywhere. Like and subscribe if you are watching the channel. Now, on a Christian front, let's talk about perhaps what was the best pastoral response to the shooting of Donald Trump this past weekend. And that brings me to one Mr. Jack Hibbs. Jack Hibbs is the pastor of, I believe, Calvary Chapel in Chino Hills, California. Yeah. Here's what he said. Mr. President, let your bloodied ear lead you to Jesus Christ. If you're watching this right now, his words, your right ear was bloodied. It wasn't your eye that got shot. It wasn't your nose. It wasn't your temple that was intended to be shot. Your ear was hit. But we would like and pledge and pray that you might bow your knee. Later, he said, quote, this has been a warning by Almighty God that your ear might be sanctified. Will you hear this? Can you hear this? Listen to the word of God. Stop talking about God and come to know God. It makes all the difference in the world. That, my friends, is how you address powerful political figures. No pandering. I'm sure Jack Hibbs, I know Jack Hibbs will vote for Donald Trump. I know he's a very strong socially conservative voter, and he leads his church as such. But I talked about him last night. I want to just kind of clarify some of my comments. That's a great response to Donald Trump's shooting from a very, very popular conservative Christian leader. Now, there's also some news out of the entertainment industry, and it brings me to ridiculous. So more social or cultural warfare from the award shows of our culture. I think we have far too many award shows. Even sports gets an award show. I thought the award show was when they actually win the trophy, but no. Sports has to have this thing called the Espy Awards, which I didn't even know was still a thing. I guess it's this award show that still happens where the teams who got trophies for winning the sports event now get trophies for being good winners of the sporting event. The award shows are too many. This is why all the kids in kindergarten need a trophy, no matter how badly they miss the ball in T-ball. So Quinta Brunson joined the Williams sisters on stage for a moment that should have been harmless, but they decided to take a shot at one Harrison Butker. You'll remember Harrison Butker from his commencement address a couple of months ago, where he said that most women, not all women, but most women would probably find the most fulfillment in their lives from being wives and mothers. Now, this kind of speech is unacceptable in the political left sphere. You cannot say that most women will enjoy being moms and wives. That is officially hate speech. Again, that's where the political left is. Will the political right be there eventually? Harrison Butker says, I'm not standing for that. I'm standing for what I believe biblically, and he's going to get some flack from it. So this went down.
So go ahead and enjoy women's sports like you would any other sport, because they are sports. Yes. Except you, Harrison Butker. We don't need you. At all. Like ever.
And so Harrison was in the audience at that time getting mocked, vilified, and cheered on as he's mocked and vilified as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. So that is the tolerance of the political left. That is the entertainment industry. That is the award-centric populace of our country, and that's where we are. Anyway, that's where I leave you. Pastorally speaking, you have got to do some soul searching as to who you vote for. I know who I'm voting for. It's not going to change. But at the same time, I think we have to be aware of the time in which we live. Things are getting shaken up. I don't know if you've noticed that. The political spectrum is being shaken up. The landscape is being shaken up. We might be confused. Well, guess who is in charge of the shaking? God. Hebrews chapter 12:25 says, see that you do not refuse him who is speaking, for if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we escape if we reject him who warns from heaven? At that time, and he's talking about when God thundered from Sinai, his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. So there is a great shaking that is about to happen over the entire universe, God says in his word. This is the end times we are talking about in Hebrews chapter 12. So what is our response to be? Hebrews continues in verse 27, yet once more indicates the removal of things that are shaken, that is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. In other words, the shaking hasn't even started yet. And as we see the political slide to more progressive secular viewpoints on both the right and the left, Christians now more than ever before have to sink themselves into the kingdom of God and not the kingdoms of this world. We can vote for who we want, but at the end of the day, God's in charge of that area, that realm, and that domain, and we're not. We're the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And on that point, I leave you. My book is out now, Ending Emptiness. Check it out over at endingemptiness.com. If you want the book and to support the show beyond purchasing the book, consider being a part of the Dependables membership plans. There are 4 levels there for you. If you're in the legacy group of support, you're going to get this shirt that I'm wearing right now, God Over Government, which I think is a more appropriate shirt than ever before. When you support us, we support Project Rescue and the American Bible Society, and I'm so glad that you're with me for a back-to-back event of the Deep End. God bless and have a great night.